The Chicago White Sox had an off day on Thursday. They are currently 35-39, 5.5 games out in the AL Central. It's a new month, and the White Sox are about to start a 3-game series with the San Francisco Giants, then head back home for a big series with the Minnesota Twins. The Sox have 19 games against AL Central opponents in July alone. Will this be the month that they finally turn things around?
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it was an off day on Thursday, but that will not stop the White Sox conversations. He is a contributor for Future Sox and Sox Machine. It is a pleasure to welcome James Fox to the podcast. Hello, sir.
Hey, Nick. How's it going, man?
It is going. I appreciate you being here. I wish we had better news to talk about, but still, there is a lot to discuss. James, you know, July is going to be a very important month for our White Sox. Anything is possible, but in your mind, will the White Sox turn things around and perhaps even be in first place by the end of this month?
Man, putting me on the spot. Geez. I mean, I guess I'd say no, just because like they haven't like shown that they can, and like I just like don't know if they're going to be healthy. Now, I do think like, you know, if they do get healthy, like it's obviously going to be better. Like I know it's an excuse to like say they're injured, and that's probably what the front office would say, but they are injured. I mean, this is like not the team that they're supposed to have. But like, man, they can't hit. They don't hit enough homers. And we've seen like just with Tony, like, you know, if they're scoring 7 runs a game, like we're never going to notice, and we're not, you know, going to be as super critical of this manager, but he just loses so many games on the margins, like that, like anything close. It's like, that's why like every night we're freaking out about something, because in 3-2 games, like he does something so stupid, you know, and like you know, I've heard you talk about it, and you know, like they should be buried, and they're not, because nobody wants to win this godforsaken division. So yes, they're in it. They got a bunch of games in the division. They have really good starting pitching, which we talked about pre-show. They're gonna have to hit. So I would not bet on it, but I mean, they still have a talented roster. So like if they did it somehow and they won the division like with 85 wins or something, like, you know, I wouldn't be totally shocked. But like you said, we're probably going to have a good idea like August 1st, I would say.
Yeah, it is. You can't quit this team, honestly, when you look at what July is giving you. 7 games with the Twins, 8 with Cleveland, 4 with Detroit. Plus, there is that all-star break in there for some rest. You know, yes, they need to get healthy. They need to get some guys clicking. You and I agree, as most Sox fans agree, La Russa's not going anywhere unless it's on his terms for some reason. So how can there be change without changing the manager, the GM, and so forth? Where do you see change happening, perhaps?
I mean, I think the only way is like if some of these guys get a little bit healthy. Like, it's tough. Like, since the roster changed and it's 13-13 now, I feel like there's just like so many bad players like for Tony to play, and he just does, like he's a slave to handedness, first of all. the Gavin Sheets thing hasn't worked, even though he's looked a little bit better. But like, it's just like he'll play Leury if he's sitting there. But like if Engel's healthy and you have Pollock and you have your full team, like continuity in that like starting 9, I think would help. And then pitchers going a little bit deeper into games obviously would help too. But then, I mean, you just see like some of the nonsense every night where it's like, it's a 1-run game in the 6th and he just like refuses to go to Kelly or Graveman or guys like that. And he goes to Jose Ruiz because he's saving those guys for later. And then like you're down 6-1 and you never use them, So it's just, I don't know. With this manager, I really don't know. I mean, they're gonna have to hit. I mean, hit ball go far, team go far.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they can hit homers, they'll get back into this thing because their starting pitching's good. But they just haven't convinced me that they can.
Yeah. So mentioning ball go far, a guy like Abreu has started to heat up. I would say he's been a silver lining, throughout June. I mean, pretty impressive numbers. Had his 4-hit game in Anaheim, despite the loss. Do you have some silver linings despite the way the season has gone? I mean, I look at guys like Kopech and Vaughn, of course, and Abreu as of late as well. There's some positives. Who are some guys that you kind of look at as like, oh, well, this has been pretty, this has been a bright spot?
Well, so I think you do still have like building block players, right? Like my thing is like, every night, like if you go on Twitter, like you tie yourself up in knots, right? But it's kind of like part of our gig, I feel like. But it's like, oh, they're gonna sell everything. And like stuff like that's ridiculous because like even if they don't turn this around and they miss the playoffs, like I think they're division favorites in 2023. Like you're coming into this thing with Anderson under contract. Like Yohan Moncada's been disappointing, but he's been hurt. Like he's disappointing because he's hurt. Like this fallacy that he's like somehow bad last year is absurd. I mean, he's not the perennial MVP candidate that we thought we were getting, but he is like an all-star level player. So, you have both of those guys. You have Andrew Vaughn, who I think has arrived personally, right? And I think Luis Roberts frustrating at times, but still like ascending. Like that guy's like not his final self, right?
Oh, sure.
So you have multiple guys on the position side, plus 4 starters going forward and like an expensive bullpen. Like those guys are all going to be here next year too. So yes, like while I want to make the playoffs and like give it a shot this year, like it's not like this is the last year of a window. Mm-hmm. So I would say that. I mean, Vaughn's doing pretty much like what I expected. One of my things with Vaughn, like if that dude played in the upper minors, his prospect debut would have been like as heralded as Robert and Jimenez and some of the other guys, like your Spencer Torkelsons and stuff. But because of his path, I think we were just kind of like, oh yeah, this Vaughn guy, like we'll see if he's any good. Like he was a top 10 prospect in baseball as a right first baseman. I mean, that's insane. Like he's really good. He shouldn't be playing the outfield, but he's really good.
Yeah, excellent point. He should not be in the outfield, but he has been exciting to watch. We didn't get a lot from Lenyn Sosa. Glimpses. You almost had to take the articles and other things that you heard from people that follow him in the minors to get a sense of what we're getting, because we didn't see it yet. In your opinion, though, how was the Lenyn Sosa call-up handled?
Well, I mean, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, it's just so when they call. So, I had heard rumblings a couple weeks prior to that Hahn was in Birmingham, and it was because or he was in Tennessee watching the Birmingham team, and it was like they were considering doing this. And at that time, I thought it was because okay, they're just going to DFA Josh Harrison, and they think Sosa gives them a better chance of being like a starter at second than somebody like Yolbert Sanchez, who's in Charlotte and is kind of more of like a utility guy. So then when they did it, I'm like, okay, this dude's starting at second base. Like he's going to get his shot now. And then obviously we saw what happened, Nick. And, I know for a fact you've worked places, I've worked places where like communication is poor. And that's what's happening. Like with this White Sox team, it was totally like, Tony La Russa's like, okay, like this kid's going to have to earn it. He doesn't play the first night, right? Then he hears it from the fans, and he probably hears it from his bosses, I guess, like in bosses in quotes,
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, fine. Like I'm gonna hit him leadoff. And the whole thing was just absurd. Like if you wanted a guy to come up and fill in, like you got multiple guys in Charlotte who are organizational depth that you could just add to the 40-man, let them fill in for a weekend, and then DFA them, and that's it. Or Yolbert or whoever. It didn't make any sense. Like I don't really believe in showcases either. When like you bring him up for 4 days, so like the Reds like might get a look at him, so you could trade him to them for somebody. It just like doesn't really make much sense to me. So he needed to be added to the 40-man this offseason anyway. Like he was going to be here this year, and he'll probably be back, I would guess. You know, he had 3 hits tonight in Charlotte. So we'll see him again. It was just kind of stupid. I don't really understand what they were doing. I mean, happy for him. Like he got the per diem for 4 days and got to live the big league lifestyle. But I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, I agree. I want to talk more about the farm system, and I want to talk MLB draft. We're going to do more of that with James Fox in just a moment. Hey, folks, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, of course. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. So MLB draft coming up in a couple weeks, July 17th, I believe. Sox are picking 26th. James, who are some options for the White Sox in your mind?
Yeah, it's been talking about this a lot over Future Sox and Sox Machine. You know, I hate how late the draft is now. It's like terrible for like rookie ball has already started and the rosters are so weird because they don't have draft picks on them. And the teams don't really like it either. The teams have been ready to draft. So it's weird, like some of the intel that's out there. But,
yeah,
you know, I would say college pitching is a possibility, but the class is really picked clean. There's a lot of college starters that got hurt this year or have been hurt in the last like 18 months. So it kind of, you know, I think there might be 3 or 4 that go before the Sox pick. So honestly, like at this point, I think they take another high school bat. There's a kid by the name of Tucker Tolman out of South Carolina. He's a switch hitter. He can really hit. He's one of the best like prep hitters in the class that isn't one of those like, you know, guys that's going to go up at the top. So he would be interesting. I mean, that'd be the second year in a row where they've done something like that. I trust Mike Shirley doing that. You know, like Colson Montgomery's been really, really good. So, you know, if that's the path they go, I would be happy with that. He's a name that I've heard a lot. And then like they need a lot of pitching. I just don't think they're going to force it in round 1 when you could take college pitchers in rounds 2 through 10 if you wanted. Like there's plenty of guys to take later. So my guess would be like if I have to predict, I would say Tolman. But if he's gone, it's probably like whichever college pitcher they like out of that group. High school pitcher in the first round would really surprise me. They haven't done it since Chris Honnell in like 2001 or whenever that was.
Providence
Catholic. Providence Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they haven't done it since then, even though they've paid guys the same amount of money recently, like in the second or third round, but they haven't done it in the first. And then a college bat, like is a possibility. I just don't see it. I think if they take a hitter, they're going to take the upside of a high school hitter. I feel like, especially after what they did in the first 2 rounds last year.
It's interesting to me when you say that you trust Shirley, because I know talking to a lot of Sox fans, they are so frustrated with how the Sox have drafted over the years, from Fulmer to Madrigal, Collins to Birdie, other names. So do you feel that way, though, following it as closely as you follow it? Have you felt like Montgomery they hit it, and you know, I think they're on a better path these days now.
So I think they're on a much better path for sure, because they've started to draft more like high school guys, which I've always been a fan of. And I had a tweet today with, I mean, they got like 6 or 7 like hitters in their system that are pretty interesting. Like this isn't Like, it's weird that it was a 30th ranked farm system, and like they deserve it because it like wasn't that deep and there wasn't a top 100 guy, but they're not 30 anymore. And like I remember when they had the 30th ranked system and Addison Reed was their best prospect. Like you have like Colson Montgomery like might be a top 75 prospect like soon. Like he's been really good.
Yeah.
So like Nick Hostetler was really good to us at Future Sox, and he was always like, and I just always kind of thought that there was like an organizational mandate like those years to like take college players and to get baseball players into the system and like try to make your affiliates better and stuff there. And it's just like so short-sighted. Like I get it in round one. Like if you're picking top 5, like Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't want to give $7 million to a high school player. So like, I understand that, like you're kind of hamstrung, but like the stuff where you go like overslot $2 million deals to Steele Walker and Gavin Sheets and guys like that. I just hate that strategy. Like if you have extra money, like take a prep guy because there's just so much more upside, right? Like we saw with Jake Berger, he had all the injuries. He's playing, but he's like 26 because of it.
Yeah.
That happens to like Jared Kelly struggled a little bit, and he's pitched a little bit better, but Jared Kelly's like 20 or 21 because like the struggles aren't as significant because you're younger and you want youth. So that was the one thing, like they didn't take enough youth. The Berger pick, I think, ultimately ended up fine. That's the 11th pick. Like, and then Vaughn is obviously awesome. Madrigal didn't work out in the top 5. Collins didn't either. I mean, it is what it is. I just wish they would have taken more risks. And look, and some of that could be ownership related. It could be front office related. So, that's the biggest problem with this organization is you don't know who's running it. And you don't know who's responsible for what decisions when. And it's very frustrating that we don't have somebody like to blame.
Right. Now, I want to go back to Berger. So let's go back to the big league club. He's a curious case to me, as I'm sure it is for a lot of Sox fans. With Moncada back and hopefully he remains healthy and Berger's not going to play second. He's going to DH or play third. He needs to get consistent at bats, and we saw what happened when he did get consistent at bats. What's going to happen with Jake Berger this year?
I would think they're probably going to trade him. I'm kind of surprised they didn't trade him. I mean, I just like don't know how you roster him, right? Unless there's like, I mean, even if like there's some sort of blockbuster trade where they give up on Yohan Moncada. But you want Jake Berger at third? I don't really like.
Yeah, I want his bat. I mean,
like it's like, can you? So here's the thing: like, can you roster Jake Berger if you also have Eloy Jimenez, Grandal and Vaughn, right? And then there's like the uncertainty at first. Like, my controversial take is that like, regardless of what happens this year, you can't bring back Jose Abreu because I just think it like kills your roster. And I think he's a friggin' legend here. And I think like, you can put the statue in, but like you bring back Jose, like what are we doing here? Like that puts it like Vaughn's in the outfield. Then you're still 2 right-handed. You still have Eloy. Like it just like doesn't work right now. Like something has to give somewhere. And I thought something had to give this offseason and like they didn't do anything. And you just like keep all these corner profile guys and like you're like, oh, just play them in left and right. And it's like we've seen what's happened because of that. Like so I just think Jake Berger is gonna get lost in the shuffle, man. Like I think he can play third for the A's or something, but not here, not on a team that's like as defensively deficient as the White Sox are. It's unfortunate because it's a great story and he's hit like I think thought he was going to, but there's just like there's not 9 DHs. So
yeah, he's stuck. I want to get to some of those other points in just a second because there are other guys that, once they get healthy, how are you going to move some of these pieces to best set them up for success? I do want to talk more about this current team. Will Eloy play left field again? Again, the love for Garcia and more. We're going to get to it in just a moment. Okay. So you saw James, Lurie got his at-bats in Anaheim because they were resting Andrew Vaughn. That was a decision that was made ahead of time for 2 days rest. We've seen other guys like Graveman hey, he can't go 2 days in a row. They've been very cautious with Joe Kelly, obviously. Anderson, has been closely watched. What do you make of all of the workload management that seems to be, I don't know, I don't remember this years ago. Maybe it was happening and it just wasn't, it wasn't talked about so much. But what is your take on this?
So I know that they got rid of Alan Thomas last year, right? He was the fall guy for all this. And I still see it on Twitter, like, oh, you got to fire the whole strength and conditioning staff. And I'm like, well, they kind of did. So I had always heard really good things about Goldie Simmons. And he was like a mental skills guy in the farm system. And then he was the one that was like the strength and conditioning coordinator for like all of the minor leagues. And the White Sox promoted him, and like, whatever, nepotism, I don't know. Like if you think they should have went outside, like, fine. But just because like Goldie Simmons worked for the organization doesn't mean that he agrees like with what Alan Thomas was doing. Like, I've had this conversation with people, like, if your boss got fired and they hired you, would you do everything the same way your boss does? No, you wouldn't. So like, he deserves a chance. This is actually a place where I actually believe Rick Hahn. They hired him like right before the lockout. Then there was the lockout. He wasn't allowed to talk to any of these guys. Then they had a short spring training. And I think they legit for the first time, like, implemented, like, these guys are wearing devices and like they're monitoring them. And like all these teams like have these departments now where it's like, your like sports science department. And I think the White Sox have just been so behind that they haven't done this. So it's like, your training staff gets like, this guy is like kind of beat up today. And that's what the data is telling them, like, sit this guy. So they're doing it more than ever because they're doing it for the first time. And I just think like them not having a spring training was like a huge part of it. I think they're listening to the training staff. I just think it's like super annoying, obviously. Like they're hurt. Like Andrew Vaughn's 24. Like, he can't pinch hit,
Yeah.
like, so I'm with you
Yeah.
there. Like that, that's like kind of ridiculous. But I mean, like, yeah, a guy like AJ Pollock probably can't play every day. Like some of these guys like are going to come back early from rehab stints. Like, they're not going to play the day game after a night game. The problem is it's just so many guys,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I'm willing to give this training staff a little bit more time. Like, they've already changed out the training staff, and I'm not there. So I'm not somebody to say like, oh, the players are lazy and they're not stretching. That might be true. I just like, I don't know that. So, so I'm not one of those people that's like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. I don't know.
Yeah, with the way things are going, you want to point the finger at somebody, right? If the Sox aren't hitting, it's Menachino needs to go. With all of the hamstring injuries from running to first, let's start all over with training staff. It is frustrating.
I think they should fire Greg Walker. That's what I think they should do. Yeah.
Was Bobby Thigpen, get him out of there? Is he still in the bullpen trying to tinker with people's windups? So a guy that's trying to fight his way back, Eloy Jimenez, he had a little bit of power the other night, finally, for the first time. We're going to see him eventually, I guess. Will we see him out in left field, do you think? Or are they going to stick with him as a DH, as he has been pretty much in Charlotte?
So he sat tonight. I think the plan is for him to play left field like soon, because like his rehab stint like ends. He gets 20 days. It's like probably the 12th or 13th day of it. So I would imagine he's going to play the outfield, have a day off, play the outfield twice, have a day off, stuff like that. So I don't think they'll bring him up and have him DH only. They've just like never wanted to do that. And honestly, as bad as he is in left field, like, is he the worst option out there? I don't know. Like, who do you think is a worse outfielder between who's the best defensively in the outfield of Eloy, Sheets, and Vaughn?
Eloy, Sheets, and Vaughn. I think Vaughn.
Maybe,
Vaughn is
right, but he's not very good either. So, especially
exactly.
Especially
this is a rough,
So right. So if Eloy like truly feels like he hits better like in the field, I'm guessing they'll play him in left and they'll rotate DH around and whatever. My biggest thing with Eloy is he's got to hit the ball in the air, and he finally did it in Charlotte. And like, you and I might be able to hit in Charlotte. Like, that place is a launching pad, and he's just like pounding balls into the ground. I don't know how much of it is still from the chest injury last year, if he just needs to, because he really didn't have that many at bats. That's the thing too. It's like, oh, he was bad at the beginning of the year. It's like, yeah, he was, but like there wasn't that many games. It's such a small sample. Even
Yeah.
Moncada has been horrible, but it's like less than 100 at bats. Like that's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what's going to happen then with if Vaughn's going to be your DH and then Eloy comes back? He's going to have to play left field if you want Vaughn to stay at DH. And, there's a lot of moving parts.
But I think it does fix some of the issues, right? It kind of like Tony proofs the roster like we've talked about. Like if
Yeah.
you have to play Eloy in left, right, then Pollock's your right fielder when he plays, which helps
Correct.
there. That means no Gavin Sheets. That means no Leary, unless
Yeah.
like if Leary's at second, like instead of Josh Harrison, like I'm still not a fan, but like I hate it less, right? Because then they're both not playing. Like
Yeah.
Moncada's at third, like you got your regular team then. And then Vaughn can DH. That's fine. Or like Vaughn can be in left and Eloy can DH. Like those are your main guys. But he's got to come back, and he might not even be good, but at least like it's not Gavin Sheets or Hazley. Like anytime a righty starts, like it's just like kind of makes it so like, okay, here's your starting 9. Like start these guys every day.
Yeah, I would love just a crock pot lineup. Set it and forget it for a while, and just see what happens sooner rather than later. You mentioned Lurie Garcia. He's always talked about, and he gets dumped on more than he should because he comes up in these situations with runners on late in the game, and he's a fall guy. Do you see him, staying with the Sox for the entirety of this 3-year contract?
Oh, I don't think so. No way. I think like I don't think anything happens this year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they switch managers next year. If like he was just like, okay, like that's fine. We'll just eat them. I mean, they've eaten money before.
Yeah, sure.
The thing is, like I truly believe Rick Hahn when he says like the front office's vision was like he's the 26th man, but the manager thinks he's Jose Oquendo, and as we've seen, he's not Jose Oquendo. He came into last night's game with a 28 WRC plus, and I know your listeners are smart. 100's good. 100 is not good. 100's league average. 100 like you're a league average ball player with a 100 WRC plus, and Leary's is 28. And as bad of a year as Moncada had, like I think his was like 49. He was still better than Leary, by quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's literally one of the worst players in baseball this year, and they play him all the time, and that's why people are frustrated, and it's not his fault. Like he should have taken 16.5 million from an organization that wanted to pay it to him, but it's gonna continue as long as they keep playing it.
We're gonna let's leave listeners on a positive note. So give me something, somehow, some way to get excited about as a Sox fan, James. Heading, I guess, into July or maybe even throughout the early part of the second half of the season. What can we get excited about as Sox fans?
Well, I mean, I still think the starting pitching is pretty good. And I don't know if it's exciting, but you've mentioned the division games. They're the most important. They haven't played in the division at all. I mean, that's where like if you beat the Twins head to head, like you're picking up games, right? You're not looking at the scoreboard trying to. So like I feel like they, like every time we're out, they pull us back in, right? Because it's like with what I do at Future Sox and like we cover the draft and I cover the minor leagues, it would be very easy for me, to just kind of check out and watch the highlights and do that sort of stuff. Like if you're like 11 back or something, but it's like not going to happen because neither one of these other teams like wants to bury them. So, I think they have a shot. I truly think like, not everybody's watching minor league baseball like I am. I think there's some good stuff happening down on the farm. I think there's been real gains on the offensive side, which is something that hasn't really happened in a while. So yeah, I mean, people can, people can follow Future Sox. We're covering it. But we're just as frustrated as everybody else is about the big league club.
Always a pleasure talking with you, James. I really enjoy these conversations. Please let us know where we can find all of your amazing stuff. Where are you doing all of these items, Fab?
Yeah, so you could still go to futuresox.com. We are a member of Sox Machine now, which is, it's been really good for us, working with mostly Jim and Josh. They're awesome. if we were going to do something like that, it was going to be with them. So, you can access our stuff through the Sox Machine site, or futuresox.com takes you there, obviously. And then I think everybody follows Future Sox, but it's just at Future Sox on Twitter. And then I'm at James Fox 917. We have draft profiles coming out. We're covering the draft right now, a couple weeks away. So that's what I'm doing. And me and Josh Nelson host a draft show that night at Twitter Spaces. So, they pick 26, and we'll be on for like 4 hours.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great stuff, man. Thank you so much for joining Locked On White Sox.
All right, Nick, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, folks, so much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I'll recap the San Fran series and get you ready for that big series with Minnesota. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.